I'm going to be talking about this video clip. I don't have the equipment to play it and comment alongside it, unfortunately. It's Dr. Brearey BBC interview clips. Free Lucy Let Be. The channel is this one. Free Lucy Let Be. Okay, so that's the video I'm referring to here. Okay, so Stephen Brearey's words in these interview clips. A review of the care of all three babies was done, and there was nothing in common that we could pin this three deaths on. So let's start by pointing out that he misspeaks quite a lot. The way he speaks is he sort of swallows some of his words somehow, and he seems to select his words very carefully as he's going along. Which is image management. Review of the care of all three babies was done. So we have, he's not in this, okay, so there's no subject at the beginning of his sentence here. He doesn't say who did the review until later when he says we at this point. So he doesn't start with I as a subject or we as a subject, so there's like less commitment to it. A review of the care of all three babies was done, so it's passive, and there was nothing in common that we could pin this three deaths on. So this three deaths, this is what I mean by misspeaking. He seems to speak quite awkwardly. This can happen when we're not talking from experience, we're sort of making something up. So the natural language that would automatically be produced by us when we speak doesn't happen, and it turns into this sort of awkwardness, like this three deaths. Unless this is a sort of a regional thing, I'm not sure where he's from. This three deaths but the staffing analysis did. Okay, so the staffing analysis identified, not them. So him and anyone else who did the review couldn't identify anything in common, but the staffing analysis somehow has the ability to identify, if you see what I mean. There's no person in there, it's the staffing analysis. That's how distant it is from him being in that process and taking responsibility for his thoughts or his involvement. Now it's the staffing analysis that did identify that Lucy Let Be was on shift for those three episodes. Episodes is a strange word choice as well. I'd say that's a bit of a red flag, because he's not saying what he means by that. It's quite vague. Well, I think I can remember saying. Right, so what he's responding to here is Judith Morritz asked him, did it worry you? And he starts off with the word well, which is storytelling. Well, I think I can remember. So this is incredibly weak. I think, so not I can remember. I think I can remember. And remember is, of course, fallible, because we might sort of like be mistaken in our memory. So it's very weak. It's not that, I said, oh no, it can't be Lucy, not nice Lucy. He thinks he can remember saying, oh no, it can't be Lucy, not nice Lucy. I don't recall the first time that I met Lucy Let Be. She started work in 2012, he said. She didn't strike me as too different to most nurses on the unit. So he is highlighting a little bit the fact that he doesn't... This is through my own filter, but if I see a sort of like a leader, supposed leader, who doesn't know any of the staff, doesn't seem to know the people on the front desk, for example, and doesn't seem to know the people who are working there day in, day out, even though they're supposed to be in charge of the place, I don't think that's a great sign of a leader. I don't recall the first time that I met Lucy Letby. So basically, he doesn't give importance to her as a human being. That's my interpretation. She started work in 2012. She didn't strike me as too different. Okay. So that seems fairly positive at that point. And then she asked him, Judith Morritz asked him, did it, what did she ask him? Let me see if I can just quickly find the right bit.
A review of the care of all 3 babies was done. Lucy Letby, she started work in 2012. She didn't strike me as too different to most nurses on the unit.
You didn't have any worries about her doing the job?
I don't think.
Yeah, so she asked him similar question again. So she asked him, you didn't have any worries. So she's leading the topic here. She's not letting him sort of speak freely on what he chooses. So she's asking again, she's pushing him, you didn't have any worries? And he says, I don't think anybody did. And then he nods. So he's looking for, with the nod, I'm not really doing behavioural analysis, but the nod was quite key in this answer that he gave, where he wants to check, in my view, that she heard what he's saying here and she's listening and she accepts what he's saying. So he's sort of like trying to persuade her and convince her. I don't think anybody did. So again, think, it's not very strong. It's not that, I didn't have any suspicions about her. I didn't have any worries about her work. No, he said, I don't think anybody did. So he's hiding in the crowd there. It's not just him that supposedly failed to notice anything worrying. I don't think anybody did. So it's social proof. It's something that nobody really wants to consider. Stutters. That a member of staff might be harming the babies under your care. So there's a lack of ownership here. He says he's calling it your care, not under his care or anyone in particular's care. No, he's talking about your care. I don't think anybody did. It's something that nobody really wants to consider. Is sort of like gaining the agreement of the other person as well. That a member of staff might. So he doesn't say who it was at that point. He doesn't say that Lucy was harming babies at this point in the interview. He says that a member of staff might be harming the babies under your care. So that's a very sort of another awkward sentence. Nobody really wants to consider babies under your care. That's still part of the same sentence, but it's not grammatically very good, is it? So again, not a reliable and experiential statement. Something fabricated, I would say. It was the first time I started to have some concerns about the unusual, he sort of slid a little bit on there, nature of the collapses and the little bit of a jarring bit there, and then he says the deaths. What did he do? He emailed somebody. Isn't it kind of like, it's so unrealistic. If somebody really thought that there was something worrying and unusual going on here, oh, well, right, I'd better do something about this. I better email somebody. It just reminds me of those people that sit in an office and just write emails all day and they feel like they're doing their work. I emailed the unit manager after this death in October and asked to discuss Lucy Letby and her association with the deaths. It was the first time I started to have some concern about the unusual nature of the collapses and the deaths. Concerns. So in other words, he was already noticing, he felt something unusual. He hadn't been able to explain why certain babies weren't surviving. So that was already happening, but now he started to have some concerns about it. Okay, so it's not that he's just noticing something unusual right now at this point. It's that he's starting to have concerns about it, if you see what I mean. There's a distinction there. I emailed the unit manager. Such a brave act. Okay, asked to discuss Lucy Letby and her association with the deaths. Right. And then there's a response in the video clips from the hospital, and Judith Morritz, sorry, I keep sticking on her name there, Morritz, asked, what do you read from what they said to your, you'd sort of raised the alarm on this. What do you read to their response? Because their response was not to pin anything on Lucy. And Stephen Brearey said she was intimating that we're talking about whoever emailed him about what they were going to do. So maybe the unit manager, whoever it was, somebody responded to him. She was intimating that the fact that Lucy Letby was present each time was an unfortunate coincidence. She couldn't make that jump. This is really weird. Intimating is a strange word to choose, isn't it? Because that's not really the right kind of word for that sentence. I don't know if he's trying to come across as more formal, which can happen when somebody's being deceitful. What's the matter? What? Intimating that the fact that Lucy Letby was present each time was an unfortunate coincidence. She couldn't make that jump. To even consider that somebody on her unit was harming babies intentionally. So he is calling it her unit. He's not taking any ownership of the situation or the unit or the staff or the behaviour of the staff or the management or anything. Some of the babies didn't respond to resuscitation quite how we would have expected them to. Most babies, you'd get a heart rate back. Okay, so this is his what he notices about some of the deaths, the babies that died. He didn't have the competence to explain why they died. Some of the babies didn't respond to resuscitation quite how we would have expected them to. So he doesn't know what's happening here. He doesn't know why. Most babies, you'd get a heart rate back. So he's disappeared again now. He's talking about you, not himself. And they'd start, their breathing would get better. So that was a bit of he's self-correcting there. You'd get a heart rate back and they'd start. So it sounds like maybe potentially he was going to say they'd start breathing again, but he realised it better not say that. Maybe. And they'd start, their breathing would get better. But that didn't happen in these cases like you would expect. So he's trying to point out something is unexplainable about this. Okay, which was unusual. Sorry, that's part of the same sentence. So, which was unusual. It was quite surreal. Right, this is a really creepy bit because he starts getting really excited about what happened. So let me just try and find Judith Moritz's question.
It's something that nobody really wants to consider, that a member of staff might be harming the babies under your care. It was the first time I started to have some concerns about the unusual nature of the collapses and the deaths. I emailed the unit manager after this death in October and asked to discuss Lucy Letby and her association with the deaths. Some of the babies didn't respond to resuscitation quite how we would expect them to. Most babies, you get a heart rate back and the breathing would get better. But that didn't happen in these cases, like you'd expect, which was unusual. It was quite surreal because we had these concerns and as a group.
Okay, he's not responding. Okay, so they've edited it out. They haven't said what Judith's question was here, but he starts smiling and getting excited at this point in the interview clip. It was quite surreal because we had these concerns and as a group. So he's hiding in the group here. There's no I here. It's us against them. As a group, our concerns were rising. He's hiding within the group there and our concerns were rising. So it's sort of like he's adding energy to this image that like they're all concerned as if like there's lots of us who all have the same thought and the same idea here, or at least more than one of us. And there's no communication from senior managers in the trust. So this really strikes me. This is through my filter, I interpret this as him getting excited that, okay, nobody's going to silence us now. There's no communication from senior managers. It's almost like he finds that as like, this is our chance now. We're going to run away with this. We're going to run with this now in the trust. And then this is very, I'd say this is very clear point of him lying. Just see if I can find the right bit without...
To be clear, these babies, the triplet babies, were in very good health.
Okay, so Judith Morritz asked him to clarify whether the babies were in good health. He said, so not yes. And then again, he says, Okay, and he is moving his jaw around and pressing his lips together. It looks totally weird. So he's very stressed by having to lie to that answer, having to lie in his answer to that question of that they were very well. The babies supposedly were very well.
Consecutive days. Can you remember what?
Okay, so and then she asked him what were you feeling? It's like disbelief, really. So it's not disbelief, but it is like disbelief. Really, he's trying to convince us that it could be happening, and a little bit of anger and confusion. And a feeling of we really need to do something about this. That's not a feeling. A feeling of we really need to do something about this is not a feeling, if you see what I mean. We really need to do something about this. So again, the we, not I, really need to do something. And do something about this. About what? What's the problem here? In his... he's sort of inferring that he's talking about Lucy Letby being on the unit rather than the fact that baby's died. And because that's what it leads on to here. And I spoke to her towards the end of the meeting, and I said how tired and upset she must be. He is coming across, or he wants to, as a thoughtful and caring person who is sympathising with how tired and upset she must be. After 2 days of this, so again, he's not saying what this is, but he is inferring, he wants to give a different impression of what he's actually saying. In other words, he's referring to the fact that she's been on the unit when the baby's died, not the fact that the baby's died. And how I can show that is that I hope, he didn't really put it in the right tense there, I hope she was going to have a restful weekend, and she turned to me and said, no, I'm back on shift tomorrow. So what he was trying to do was say, don't come in. But he was instead saying, how tired and upset. I hoped she was going to have a restful weekend. She turned to me, when we talk about someone's posture, then that indicates stress. So she turned to me, it kind of gives the impression of like a bit of drama here, and the fact that she wasn't paying attention to him, and then she turned to him and said, no. And I'm back on shift tomorrow. No, I'm back on shift tomorrow, which struck me as being incredible, really. He wanted her to be, this is my word, I'm just thinking he wanted her to be scared, and she wasn't. The other staff were, very traumatised by all of this. He does a really big smile at this point. The other staff were very traumatised, so not just traumatised, very traumatised. The other staff were, very traumatised by all of this, and then he's like sort of smiling and laughing, crumbling before your eyes, not their eyes, not his eyes, almost, so lack of commitment to this statement. And she was quite happy and confident to come into work on the Saturday. Now, this is some examples of his manipulative strategies. He lays them out for us here so that we can see them in black and white. I challenged her. I said, well, are you saying that? And he smiles. You're making this decision against the wishes of 7 consultant paediatricians. It's a setup, isn't it? And she said yes. So he's getting her to admit that she's going against advice of higher up people. And by coming into work. And I said, well, if you're making this decision, he was smiling again in this part, are you taking responsibility for anything that might happen tomorrow to any other of our babies? And she said, yes. So he has kind of forced or encouraged her into making this acceptance of responsibility before anything happens, before anything further might happen. And the phone call stopped shortly afterwards. So that's a skip in time. What else was said? We don't know. We had a number of meetings with senior management. It was quite clear that they weren't going to budge, and they didn't think appropriate to go to the police at that stage. So he's uncomfortable here, I think, because he doesn't speak properly again. He doesn't put all the words in that are necessary for that to make grammatical sense. And they didn't think appropriate. Instead of, something like they said it would not be appropriate, or they didn't agree that it would be appropriate. They didn't think appropriate to go to the police. He's sort of skipping over that because he doesn't like that they felt that they reacted that way, maybe. I don't know how you'd define a cover-up. Okay, so this is another smiley bit from Stephen. Judith is asking him, is this a cover-up? I don't know how you'd define a cover-up, but to us, the evidence in front of us was quite clear. He uses the word clear more than once in this set of interviews. So, us, again, the pronoun, not I or me, it felt like that. Trying to engineer some sort. There's a missing pronoun here. So he doesn't say, for example, it felt like that they were trying to engineer some sort of narrative. Maybe because actually his brain knows really that he's the one trying to engineer the narrative. So he doesn't say like I was engineering a narrative. He's trying to put that onto them. It felt like that, trying to engineer some sort of narrative. And there's a lot of smiling here. Or way out of this. What's he referring to? He doesn't say. That didn't involve going to the police. If you want to call that cover-up, then that's a cover-up. So he can't come back to him later and say, oh, Stephen, you lied. You said this was a cover-up. No, I didn't say it was a cover-up. You said it was a cover-up. Okay, Tony Chambers concluded the meeting with a statement to us saying that we were to apologise to Lucy Letby and that a line had been drawn and that we were not to cross that line. This is pretty vivid I think this part is, maybe this is true, because it feels different when you listen to him saying this part. It feels a bit like a child being told off by their parent and he recalled word for word like what his parents said to him. Okay, a line had been drawn and that we were not to cross that line, and if we were to cross the line there would be consequences. So I think maybe that is accurate enough of what was said to him and the others at that point by Tony Chambers. That was the intention of the executives, was to somehow close this case. What case, Stephen? It was the first... Right, this is my favourite part of the interview because it's so gross. So it just really... It was interesting to think about this, like his language here. He's so awkward in this answer. I'm talking about this section. So at the point he's talking about he found Judith says that he found evidence that a baby had been poisoned. He was looking through the notes for the police. Nice. And then Judith said he found evidence that a baby had been poisoned. So now, there's no question, but he goes on to answer. This is what he says. I mean, it's edited out. It was the first sight I had of this results. So that's weird. You know, I said he misspeaks quite a lot. So again, it's not experiential language. It's sort of something he's fabricating as he's going along, and that's why it comes out so clunky. And it made me feel sick. He nods. He looks for the approval from her and the understanding. Actually, thinking about, and then he almost swallows the word "it" at the end. So that is just it's a nonsense question. Nonsense statement. Sorry. It was the first sight I had of this result, and it made me feel sick actually thinking about why. It doesn't really say very much, does it? Now, he carries on. So, again, I mean, in my opinion, this is just clearly a lie because of the language, the way he uses the language here. Was a baby case in front of me in which it was quite clear, using the word clear again, clear is a convincer, as if to say, like, if this isn't clear to you, then you must be stupid. So it was quite clear that this baby had been poisoned by insulin, not by somebody, by insulin. You see, there's no agent here, there's no pronoun here. This baby had been poisoned by insulin, and the nursing records, so not somebody said, not somebody, like, agreed, but the nursing records have the agency here. The nursing records supported the fact that Lucy Letby was present. He's not in that at all. So he doesn't take any responsibility for any of that. He does some weird, like, jaw movement stuff. And then she said, was this a missed opportunity? This is totally weird. He goes, yes. So either the tension of directly lying by saying yes when he meant no, or just the fear that he was going through trying to maintain his composure when he answered this question. She asked him something and he just goes, yes, about it being a missed opportunity. In an ideal world, you'd hope that the lab would flag it so it would be reviewed by somebody senior. There is quite a lot of emphasis on, like, who's senior and who's junior. And I've seen this disparaging kind of attitude from another person I've known with this sort of personality type in my own life. So somebody senior, that didn't happen. Okay, so basically, not my fault, that didn't happen, and passivity there. They were a smoking gun for these babies. So the insulin results, Judith is asking him, did that come close to being a smoking gun? He said they were a smoking gun. He starts, like, laughing or smiling for these babies, for sure. And I. So he's stuttering on his pronoun, which is what we do when we are being less reliable in what we're saying and we're not committing so much to what we're saying. I don't have any doubt. So he's talking about what he doesn't have, not what he doesn't say I'm confident. He's saying I don't have any doubt. So that's something that would be flagged in linguistics. I don't have any doubt that Lucy Letby harm these babies. I don't think he said the word correctly again, so the tense changed, which is another red flag in linguistics, and harm these babies. It's not a solid statement at all in terms of truthfulness. Well, right, so now she asked if he thought there was any other explanation apart from the fact that Lucy Letby was doing something to the babies. Well, that was the journey we went on. He slurs it into the word. So I almost thought he said, well, that was the journey went on. But when you re-listen, he does say, we went on. But there's a very small, amount of us in there. In the first year, before we finally asked her to be removed, he's so patient, from the neonatal unit. And this is another odd language use. So we finally asked her to be removed. So did you go to her and say, Lucy, please, can you be removed? Do you see what I mean? It's like clunky and awkward is lying again, in my view. Neonatal unit, that was a year of looking for all those alternative explanations. And he actually hisses here. We excluded all those things. Lucy Letby isn't a thing, by the way, until we got down to 1 point. Lucy Letby isn't a point. So he's objectifying and dehumanising to some extent, which was Lucy Letby. I think. Now, this is really interesting. I think I'm almost done with this. I think those parents can expect. So Judith asks him, what can expectant parents, how did she put it, expectant mothers, Can they be confident? Whoa, he nearly breaks at this point. His composure, I think those parents can expect. He mirrors the language that she used, I think maybe because he's terrified of this question. And he knows that they can't be confident in his unit. So he can't say, they can be confident in our unit. He says, I think those parents can expect. And he's doing some like weird jaw movement. As high a level of care on our unit than any other unit in the country, really. Right, Stephen, I think there's one more bit. And then I'll just tell you what I noticed. We've got through a particularly hard time and I think we owe it to the families for them to know that the staff care. So that's his closing statement. He wants the families to know that the staff care. So is he saying that actually our nurses do care? I care. I'm capable of caring about human life. So what is this whole set of interviews about? What is it not about? And what is missing? This is about the hard time they got through. Blame versus lack of responsibility. How he convinced or tried to convince others. Somebody was harming, in inverted commas, babies. Superiority. What isn't this about? Acknowledgement of any of the individuals who died. What's missing? Responsibility, apology to babies and parents, reassurance for the future, for example, improvements. Thank you.